And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another exciting episode of the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on American Freedom Radio. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a global high-tech concentration camp is Vinny's jokes. Now, my very special guest joining me today is, let me see if I can actually bring up my cable thingy. There we go. Okay, is actually Jonathan Royle, who's from magicalguru.com. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Good, well, it's evening here in England, but good day to you over there in New Zealand.
It's actually good morning. So I'm in the morning, you're in the evening, both of us are tired. This is going to be great. Now, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little background on who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, my background's a bit odd, a bit unusual, but then again, what is normal? That's just a perceptual thing anyway, but I was born on a circus. My dad's a circus clown. My mum was sharp-shooting, whip-cracking, knife-throwing cowgirl. And at the age of 3, I was Britain's, probably at the time, the world's youngest professional paid circus clown. And that led to me, when I was going to school, being seen as the odd one out. And not surprisingly, getting bullied because I was appearing in the national media with the obligatory red nose and silly big boots and stupid outfit and whatnot. And I grew to resent my dad because I blamed him for me getting bullied because he got me into doing the clowning. But the thing is, by that time, I'd got addicted to audiences laughing at the right time because they were supposed to, or clapping, and it was like a drug. A lot of performers will say it's the best high you can get when an audience is appreciating stuff. So I wanted to carry on performing, but in my strange, twisted logic as a child, I thought I need to stop doing the clowning, then I'll stop getting bullied. So I started doing magic. David Copperfield, think David Copperfield, Penn and Teller, that kind of magic, not worshipping the devil or anything. And I'd been doing that as a hobby, but I started doing that in the shows that my family was doing instead of the clowning. Figure, great, I'm getting the applause from the audience. I feel good. When I go to school, they're not going to bully me because I'm not a clown anymore. Sadly, I soon discovered that kids are cruel, and it was enough the fact that I was appearing in the newspapers and stuff that was what caused them to bully me as the perceived odd one out. Not that I was a clown, it didn't matter. When I did magic, same thing occurred. So I spent most of my childhood getting bullied at school, but then having that escape on stage of the laughter and applause. And magic was my hobby, and I went to a library in England where the magic books were, the conjuring books. Next to them would be where the personal development and self-help books were. And there was a book there called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I saw this title and I thought, hang on, if I read that, if it teaches me how to win friends and influence people, I'm not going to get bullied at school. So I got it, read it, and I very rapidly discovered that techniques that work on adults, which clearly is what the book was aimed at, don't work so well on kids. In fact, they tend to get you more bullied more rapidly and more severely, sadly. Yeah.
Kids are just pains in the ass. Oh my God. I can't believe how many times I ran away from school as a kid or got suspended. I think I got suspended from my high school 17 times for various reasons. So it's just like, I didn't do terribly well in a slave indoctrination camp. You know, it's just not me.
Exactly. Well, that was the other thing. Apart from the bullying, I very quickly, because I came from a circus background, and then I went into magic tricks. And then by my early teens, in a quest for personal development, like Sigmund Freud, as he's better known as, said, many therapists become therapists because they're searching for answers to their own problems. Well, that is how I got into hypnotherapy in my teenage years, by lying about my age, doing a hypnotherapy course, telling them I was 18. God knows how they believed me because I looked about 8, even though I was 12. Anyway, I did that and I passed it when I was 14 and started treating people. And then at 15, I realised I was missing the applause from performing. So I started doing the stage hypnosis side of things. And the end result of all of that growing up was that on the circus, lots of things that look dangerous actually have a secret trick to them and they're quite safe. But lots of things that look safe or relatively uncomplicated are actually the things that could bloody well kill you. It's kind of inverted. And I grew up knowing things weren't always what they appeared to be. More so when I got into doing magic, I would have to learn body language techniques or verbal linguistics to get people to psychologically think a different way than they would do normally, or to look in a different direction so they didn't see the cards getting moved or placed where they were magically going to appear in a few moments' time. So I had to manipulate their reality so that what they perceived they'd seen was different than what was actually going on. And I figured, hey, if I'm doing that, doing magic tricks, I started to see this was going on a much bigger scale around us. When I got into hypnotherapy, obviously that goes into then using techniques to effectively close down the conscious area of the mind, bypass the critical faculty, the gatekeeper, or you could think of it as like a very angry nightclub doorman that goes, you're not effing coming in this nightclub without, being on the guest list. Well, with hypnosis, you can get him to have a tea break so then you can get into the unconscious mind, the bit that's like your personal desktop computer. And just like a computer, if that's running good software, you'll get a good outcome in life. If it gets a virus, you get negative results. And the gatekeeper normally acts as an antivirus software, but when you're hypnotized, or when you're under severe stress, or when you're under fear, when you're scared, or disorientated and confused, or sensory overload, too much to think about, all of these things overload the critical faculty and can flick you into a theta state, which is hypnosis, where you become immediately more suggestible and pliable and easily manipulated. Now, that's great if someone's doing it with your positive intent and is trustworthy, like a hypnotherapist helping you overcome your habits, addictions, fears, or phobias. Or perhaps going to a show by a mind reader performer. I'm not sure if you've heard of a guy called Darren Brown out in New Zealand. Or if you can always search Google and you'll see he does this stuff. It looks like he's reading people's minds, but in truth, quite often, yes, he does use some trickery, but he uses a lot of verbal linguistics, psychology, hypnosis, and the kind of things, but he's using it to entertain. But these things in the wrong hands, or they would argue in the right hands, but used with their gain in mind to control the masses, are what and why we end up with the so-called education system, which is nothing more than getting us to learn to obey authority figures because they reward you when you pass an exam and they scold you if you fail. So you're getting used to listening to what authority figures say, remembering it, taking it as fact, not questioning it, and recalling it when the authority figure tests you on it. So you're getting conditioned from an early age to obey authority figures. And so it carries on in all areas of life with politics, religion, all of these constructs that are purposely there to divide and conquer, to keep people arguing amongst themselves and disagreeing and creating that confused, disorientated state of mind that's very much in the middle. And by in the middle, I mean, everyone no doubt has heard of fight and flight. If you got confronted by a
flight, and freeze, all right? Because
exactly.
It's either can I kill it, can I run from it, or do I have to freeze, and hope that it goes away, that kind of thing. And because you can't kill the government or run away from it, basically everybody's living in a constant state of freeze, anxiety.
Precisely. And that freeze as well is disorientation and confusion can become amplified by people going, well, I know perhaps I could do something, but should I? Oh, no, I'm too scared. Well, I'd be the odd one out. People might say I'm, ridiculous for trying to do something. And that causes cognitive dissonance, which is a state of mind where people, I do believe a lot of the populace out there know deep down that the powers that be do not have their best interest at heart. They're just about getting more and more power, making more and more money for themselves.
Yeah, and we've even had a comment.
Consciously,
Sorry, we've even had a
Yes,
comment in the chat room from one of my listeners, Peter. He says part of the reason he's homeschooling and never allowing his daughter to step in a school. Good on you, Peter.
yeah, good on you. Exactly. I couldn't agree more, because at least, yes, the stuff they teach at school, they have to teach some stuff that's useful. But if it was truly about helping you in life, rather than getting you to obey authority figures, why don't they from an early age teach us how to budget and make sure we've got money left at the end of the month? When we do get money in, why do they not teach us how to cook from an early age properly on a budget? Why do they not teach us how to change plugs and fuses and things that we're actually all going to encounter in everyday life? No, trigonometry. Fine if you're going to become an architect, but you'd have to study it at university anyway. So why frigging waste everyone else's time with it? Because they're not there to truly help us. And yeah, that freeze thing, we need to break out of it. And that's what, hopefully, my documentary is going to help people to do.
What's interesting is it's cult indoctrination techniques as well, because in a cult, they get you away from your family. Are your family with you at school, ladies and gentlemen? No, they're not. They've got you in a little brainwashing institution.
And that's why more and more around the world we can see, I mean, I can only speak for England firsthand on this one, but from what I've seen on the internet, this is happening more and more around the world, where unemployed ladies, sometimes men, because sometimes there's the role reversal where the woman's, the main breadwinner and the bloke stayed at home to help bring up the kids, but are being encouraged back into work by governments who are now starting to offer more affordable childcare or free childcare. And it seems as though they're doing this to help. But the thing is, if they get the person to go out to work, it means they can stop paying them as many benefits.
Yeah.
Also, it means they can start charging them more, they can get tax off their earnings. So they're in a win-win situation there. And also, if they're the ones providing the childcare, they can mandate what goes on during the childcare time in terms of further brainwashing, indoctrination, and such like.
So when you're talking about hypnosis and all of these things, the first thing that actually occurred to me is mass hypnosis, mass mind control. How to not only just, get somebody to give up their smoking or whatever, but to get an entire population to think that authority is real and has legitimacy. That was what I was thinking when you were telling me about this hypnosis shit.
The person who's I'm not going to, when I say this person's name, I'm not saying it to hold them up as a hero or anything. In fact, if what we're told occurred is true, as it does appear to be, then it's absolutely abhorrent. And this individual was a twat of the highest order. But a prime example of being able to hypnotize a nation was Hitler and how he hypnotized the Germans. Crowd control par excellence. He had it down to an art, and you can look at old rallies, there's black and white footage. He'd have Goebbels go on first, like his comedy warm-up man. He literally was sort of telling a few gags, relaxing the crowd, and then getting them all to arms out in the air, Heil Hitler. And there was no accident in the Heil Hitler thing, because the moment you put your arm out like that in the air and raise it slightly, what it does physiologically wise is it helps to release serotonin into your brain. Don't worry, I'm not getting assassinated for being on the Vinny Eastwood show. We have an Asian wedding taking place across the road, and it appears that they've decided to set the fireworks off now, so don't worry, I will.
Whoa, that's going to take some time there. Okay, well, that's great. So how long is that going to take? Quite some time, eh? So let's just mute that for the second. Okay, so the live audience can't hear you now, and make sure you remind me when, like, I can still hear you, but the audience can't. So just remind me when the fireworks stop, and I'll turn you back on. Okay, it just appears to have stopped. Fantastic. All right, so we're back on. So sorry, what were we talking about before the fireworks?
Hitler.
Ah, yeah. I was just thinking about that.
Tell a few gags.
One thing I was going to say about that is it's actually a Roman centurion salute. Okay, that salute's actually thousands of years old. Much like the swastika itself, thousands of years old. And they changed the direction of it so it's left-hand facing, left-hand black magic rather than right-hand white magic, that kind of thing. So it was actually an occult ritual that they were getting the crowds basically indoctrinated with, isn't it?
There is that argument. The bigger picture is, and yes, it does go back to the Romans and before. When you put your arm in the air, kind of like that, okay, that's Heil Hitler. I know I said that wrong, but I always do. It helps release serotonin into the bloodstream, into the brain, the body's feel-good chemical. So it actually physiologically makes the person feel good about what's occurring, and therefore makes them more suggestible to what's going to follow because they feel in a good state of mind. This is why you see people at evangelical meetings, these big religious healing meetings, ending up reaching out with both arms in the air. They're encouraged to do that, praising the Lord. It's because the fraudulent evangelical preacher knows that will release serotonin and other chemicals in the body that will make the person feel good and hyped, and therefore it adds to it. You see this happen at sporting events as well. Yay! When the team, it happens in all manner of things. If you look at political campaigns, they introduce you see lots of the crowd lifting. It's because it's encouraged and it becomes addictive for people to do, because when you do it, there is a genuine physiological chemical release in the body that makes the person feel good. And the powers that be know this. They can manipulate things like that to their advantage. That's
kind of devious. And I've got a couple of new ideas for my political speeches in future. So what about... this concept here is, so if you've got the ability to hypnotize, manipulate, and use physiology and psychology to basically get a crowd to do what you want, it reminds me of what Edward Bernays was saying, that it's a hell of a lot easier to convince 100 people than it is to convince one person. And so he said, don't bother with the one person. You can just mass mind control's like basically the shit. That's where it's at.
And the thing is, you don't have to. We'll just use the number 100 because it's an easy percentage. So if you've got 100 people, it could be thousands, it could be millions, but you've got 100 people, you've only really got to kind of get 51% of them, 51 of them out of the 100 to either fully agree with you or agree with you a bit, and you've won. Because in that circumstance as a crowd, the other 49 will generally be too scared to speak out and disagree with the majority of the group. And over time, they will come to believe that they agreed with it all themselves voluntarily from the start, because that way they don't have to feel bad deep down inside for having just followed the crowd and been a sheep.
Reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard of this phenomenon, cryptomnesia. It's like amnesia, but except it's when you forget the inspiration for a joke or an idea or an invention or something like that. You saw it at some point, you completely forgot about it, and then years down the track, you come up with it by yourself, all right? And you think that it was yours. And that's sort of like a really fast-track version of what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially. That's a totally harmless way it can manifest. Whereas, these are psychological things that happen and are natural things that happen. But when they are used with negative intent, they can be used in covert, negative manners to control, manipulate, gain power, control, and money out of people, which is what governments do. And, people, I'm sure, have heard of a thing called MK Ultra, which stands for Mind Control Ultra, which was a CIA experiments they did shortly after World War II when...
well, it was actually an expanded program off of the Fourth Reich's mind control. Okay, MK is
Yeah.
mind control.
Joseph Mengele was shipped over to America.
Not
at the
just
end of
him,
the
but
war.
a number of high Nazi level officials, doctors, scientists, that kind of thing. They imported them under Operation Paperclip, gave them completely new identities, so that when they came in, you're like, "Aren't you Joseph Mengele?" "No, my name's Hans Mengele." Something like that. Like, okay. And then I saw Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and it's like, okay, everybody came over under Operation Paperclip, and then Hydra grew like a beautiful parasite inside S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. Are they trying to tell us that basically the Nazis got imported to America and then took it over from within? Wasn't there an attempted coup against America by Nazi supporters in the United States that was organised by General Smedley Butler, who then whistleblowed it, but then none of the orchestrators of that plot actually went to jail? They're still in charge today? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about Nazi mind control, you know how everybody says it's like, oh, it's the most verifiable evil in mankind? They're not kidding, okay? Because it was a manufactured evil.
Well, they're all manufactured. It's just who's the ultimate person who's decided to manufacture it and what was the motive in the first place. But yeah, I mean, the reason I mentioned Mengele first is because he had the most involvement with the hypnotic kind of interlinked things. He brought in a hypnotist called George Estabrooks, who wrote a book called Hypnotism. And when that was released, that book, it got withdrawn from sale within a matter of, it literally went on sale and then got withdrawn, because they realised, the powers that be, that George Estabrooks had written a chapter in there. He'd not given away anything he should about what he'd been up to with MK Ultra and related things, but he did put a chapter in called Hypnosis and Warfare. And he explained how you could hypnotise people to be assassins, how you could hypnotise people to, as a spy, remember a load of documents dead quick, and then shut it off, compartmentalise it in their brain. So if they were interrogated, they'd never give up the information, because it would take a hypnotist to give them key phrases and commands for it to surface and come back. So they withdrew the book to get rid of that chapter. But now and again, copies of it do come up on eBay. I saw a badly damaged copy come up for £100, but normally it comes up for about £200 sterling, about $300. And I've read the chapter, because I got the book, and the chapter Hypnosis and Warfare. I personally guarantee that everything it says can be done, because on some level I've been involved in modern day usage of and experiments that prove it can be done. So knowing that it can be done, I'm sure it has been done numerous times and still is to this day, but by the authorities. JFK is one example. We know enough evidence has come out that it was not the bullet from the guy they say shot him that actually killed him. So that guy, what was his purpose if he didn't do it? It was to distract attention, confuse, disorientate, distract people from the bigger picture. Dead easy to hypnotise somebody to shoot somebody. You've just got to make them believe that what they're doing is something they want to do. So maybe make them think they're 6 years of age and they're playing cowboys and Indians, and somebody dressed a certain way in a certain vehicle is the big chief Indian, and that they'll see the vehicle as being a horse that they're riding on. And then when they get the chance, they're to take their cap gun and to shoot it at the big chief Indian. Because then what they're doing is not against their morals, their wills, or their value, because you've regressed them into the age of being 6 and they believe they're just doing something completely innocent. But the outcome can have devastating consequences.
Well, that, what would we say? That reminds me of born-again Christians. I'm born again, really. So you forgot everything you learned as an adult, and now you're just a child again, bro. So it explains the mentality of a lot of born-again Christians. Oh, I used to be this bad person. I used to be a bad person. No, you're still a bad person, and you haven't worked on any of the shadow stuff. That's why you keep telling people what you used to be, because you're trying to convince yourself that that's not what you are anymore. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more on that. And, and that's also why there's such a smell of shit, probably, because, if they've been born again, it takes a while for babies to stop crapping themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So,
That happened to me one time actually at a job. This lady told me, "Oh, you don't have any conscience," and I was just like, "What?" And I was just like, "Can you have a private conversation with me over here? We'll go into the lunchroom," that kind of thing. It's just really not a nice thing to say. Like, I didn't say that. And it's just like, you literally just psychopath. Okay, I'm out of here. That's how horrible some people are. And in fact, it's been a deep realization lately is that not only can you not save everyone, not everybody's a nice person.
That is true. Obviously, there's always going to be, sadly, some people out there who just don't want to be helped, or derive some strange pleasure in not being helped or by being nasty to people. Well, obviously there is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation where there's the psychopaths at the top pulling the strings, manipulating the messages we get told through the media, mainstream media outlets, so that it helps brainwash people so that they can control and have their power and bloody sexually abuse kids on the quiet and blackmail people. And it's sickeningly abhorrent, really.
Yeah, and you can actually traumatize yourself by looking into it, is the thing. I remember I talked to somebody who'd investigated a pedophile group in the Freemasons called the Jesters. You know what a jester's job is? To entertain the court. And they owned this burn victim unit that was for children, and they would take the children on little boat trips into the Bahamas with a whole bunch of old men, that kind of thing. And through investigating this little horrible thing, that's just the surface version. She actually really investigated it, and she got complex post-traumatic stress as a result of just researching it, not having anything done to her, not even talking to people who'd had stuff done to them, just researching into it. That's how bad this world is, man. And the problem is we've got a lot of people, I think, that want to do the right thing, but are maybe intelligently too afraid to go up against the people who are evil in this world because they're incredibly dangerous, and you kind of got to take two body bags if you want to take one of them out. One for you, one for them.
There is an element of that, but the only way we're ever going to get around that is if enough people band together. And I'm not on about going and causing riots. Anything I'm suggesting or mentioning in the documentary is all about peaceful rebellion. And it's not as difficult as it sounds. Step one, as we're showing the documentary, is to question everything. Rather than just taking the perceived authority figures, whether that be a newsreader, a political person, a teacher, rather than take, and that includes even anything I'm saying, don't take it as read. Go away, do your own research, and at least then you may come to the same conclusion and you may choose to take the same path, but you can feel better about yourself down the line. You'll never have regrets that you won't find out something later and think, fuck, I wish I'd done something about that. However, the majority of people, I suspect, when they start to ask questions, will start to then look and see the bigger picture. And then the only big obstacle to overcome is that of cognitive dissonance. The scary thing of, if I right now start doing things a bit differently and react to things in the manner that I now realise and know what they've been telling me for years is bullshit, they've been, it's an illusion, then I've got to accept the fact that I've been fooled up to this point. And people can feel daft about that or silly. Well, to those people, I say, right, that's another major aim in this documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, is to show you that you're not the only one. Everyone who is currently being vocal and helpful and trying to encourage other people to wake up has at some point, if they're honest about it, been scared before they took that leap, has felt, am I going to be like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, flying away from the pack, where the pack's encouraged to attack me for being different? Because that's what the powers that be do. They encourage the mass populace. That's why the CIA came up with the term conspiracy theory, to make it sound bad, so that if somebody started coming out with glimmers of truth or discovered stuff about something, they could go, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory nutter. And everyone would laugh and go, oh, yeah, don't listen to him.
Oh, he's got a tinfoil hat. Oh, he believes in reptilians. Just like, okay, you're retarded and you're going to die. That's basically my response to those people who use those phraseologies and things like that. There's a plan to exterminate us. You don't realize it, and you're making fun of the people who are trying to save you. You're going to die. You're no longer my responsibility. Okay, and this is. But here's the thing: it's not their fault. Okay. Think about this. I mean, it's there's a scene in the movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. Love that movie. Seen it again and again. Encourage people to watch it again and again. So anyway. He's running away, and this FBI agent there, new fresh FBI agent or whatever, tries to stop him, but the FBI agent gets disarmed and knocked out, and then handcuffed to a thing. And then he goes into this review board office, and the review's like, going, oh, how come you messed up so badly on the job? And the guy's like, this was a trained Marine scout sniper. I feel lucky to be alive. All right? It was well above my pay grade, way above my skill level, that kind of thing. And that's what attitude we've all really got to have when it comes to, are we brainwashed? Are we brainwashed by the New World Order? Who brainwashed it? Is it by chance somebody with, I don't know, thousands of years of psychological techniques that they've worked out again and again and again by looking at history and looking how to control crowds? Are we talking about people who are infinitely funded, infinitely intelligent, and just to have huge groups of people working on how to brainwash people all the time without them knowing about it? And if so, are you to blame for getting brainwashed by the best brainwashers in the business? No, not really.
No, you're not to blame for it having happened or it happening. However, each individual is to blame if they allow it to carry on when it's brought to their attention. And because the ways
right.
to...
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but that's what I always say. The difference between a so-called sheep and a so-called truther is a truther has a choice about whether or not he resists the agenda. The sheep isn't unaware that they've got a choice.
Precisely. And all the sheep have an opportunity to become more aware and enlightened and to exercise that choice. And as I say, I do believe the majority of the sheep deep down know something's not right, but there's that element of cognitive dissonance we talked about before, fear of leaving the crowd, the safety of the crowd. But the thing is, hopefully through things like, I mean, you do it through your show, people do it through books. I'm hoping that this documentary coming out the start of September, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, will help wake more people up, or rather encourage them to the fact that there are more and more people now being brave enough to think, question things, do things differently. So they can actually go into, this sounds a bit contradictory almost, they can, because they've got some safety at the minute as a sheep, rather than being a brainwashed, eyes closed sheep, they could go to the safety of being part of the eyes open group of people who then together are there to protect each other as well as helping to wake up more and more sheep. The time is getting to the point where there will be, hopefully, let's hope it happens in time, more and more of the sheep becoming awakened, because, the most urgent deadline at the minute is Agenda 21, which is Agenda 2030, which is the plan by the end of 2030. So before the 1st of January 2031, to depopulate the planet by millions and millions and millions of people. And this is not conspiracy theory. All you need to do, those people who think, nutter, no, just type in to Google Agenda 21 stroke Agenda 2030 government website, and you will get up the UN's own website, not a conspiracy theory website, not an alternative news website, not some mad website, okay, a governmental, apparently from one of the authority figures, a genuine website, as genuine as the bullshitters that control the world are, their own website laying out what Agenda 2030 is. And when you read it, they openly admit, albeit they say it's for the benefit of the planet and the benefit of each of us, but they openly admit measures have got to be taken to depopulate the planet. And they use nice terms. But when you take those words and put them in a thesaurus, they actually, a lot of them basically mean different word for genocide. In other words, murder, assassination.
We're going to save the planet, ladies and gentlemen. Why? How are you going to do that? It's easy. Mass genocide. All right? Thanos style. All right, why do you think Thanos was in that movie saying, oh, we need to kill half the population of everything and do it? Why do you think there's a movement that says Thanos is right? Because that is the New World Order trying to brainwash you into that kind of mentality. That huge quantities of extermination is not only morally justifiable, that it's a moral imperative. And as Friedrich Bastiat said, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves, in the course of time, a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. And so this is what we're doing now. We've got these climate change agendas, and I think Peter was talking in the chat room before about how much they're teaching kids about climate change in the classroom. Oh, abandon your reason. Oh, you're a cancer on the planet. Oh, don't have any children. Oh, sterilize yourself. Oh, but live a narcissistic, individualist lifestyle in your own little habitat. You know, that kind of thing. And you're like, okay, the kids are going to come out really messed up, aren't they? All right, how messed up? Messed up enough to spy on their parents for the state? You betcha.
Yeah. It's you see it more and more in every area of life on Facebook, social media platforms, because that's a great control system. And we know, I mean, in the past week, the Great Data Hack documentary has come out on Netflix, going into detail about the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal and how it harvested millions and millions of people's data illegally through Facebook, and how Facebook's been fined and was complicit in things. And ironically, that mainly happened in America. There was only about 1 million people in England affected. And bizarrely, I was one of them. And Ravi Naik, the lawyer from ITN Solicitors, who does appear in the Great Data Hack film, he is my solicitor who's currently suing Facebook for me for data breach, along with a whole bunch of other people. But anyway, my point for mentioning Facebook was they use that is making control so easy these days. Not just about getting information. They got that information. And Cambridge Analytica in England, its office hidden in the middle of nowhere, was classed by the British government as a military-grade psychological warfare system, because it hacked all this data and then it used it to make adverts and stories appearing on newsfeed that would cause you to be angry about certain things, happy about others. So it manipulated your belief system, so you'd be more likely to vote for a certain presidential candidate, or you'd be more likely to vote for a certain prime minister in England, or you'd be more likely to vote Leave or Remain, as they so desired in Brexit, because it's been shown that they influenced that as well. It's going on absolutely everywhere. Only the other day on Facebook, I saw an advert pop up. Do you know somebody who is using illegal copies of software on their computer and hasn't paid the license fee? We'll reward you. Call this number and we'll give you some cash. They're trying to get people to dob their friends in now.
Snitches. I think it was in the East German Stasi, approximately 1 in 10 people worked for the Soviets. Okay? That's a very, very scary thought, that you're walking down the street and 1 in 10 people that you're looking for, that you're looking at, is an informant for a communist government that wants you killed for doing, you know, what your moral conscience dictates you do. That's the future, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost right now. It's also the past, okay? They just want to do it again and again and again. History is a broken record.
It is, and what makes it even more scary, which is why, you know...
Sorry, we have a correction. We have a correction in here from Gang Stalking Australia. It was actually 1 in 6. I underestimated.
Even scarier then. And that is scary. But if you bear that in mind, that, to me, the fear of that is scary, is a good motivation to overcome the fear of the cognitive dissonance that puts most people off from actually starting to question things and doing something. Because at least when you're doing something and being more aware, you're less likely to drop yourself in it with a 1 in 6. You're likely to be more aware to keep, a bit of cardboard over your web camera when it's not in use, so that people can't be watching you through the webcam. I mean, look at pictures of Bill Gates and Zuckerberg when they're on the laptops. You can see the bit of cardboard, they've got it stuck over their webcam. If they are sticking bits of cardboard over their webcam, sure as hell we should be doing. You're still going to be listened to verbally. Of course you are, through your Facebook or other social media device, no doubt, maybe, allegedly. Possibly, I have to say that so I don't get sued. But you are going to be listened to. So be careful what you say. The listening device that we do live in 1984. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and George Orwell's 1984, 2 books written decades and decades ago, allegedly works of fiction.
And both men happen to be part of the Fabian Socialist Society.
Yes.
Whose plan was to create the 1984 and Brave New World thing. And so they got these 2 guys to do this book. It's called Predictive Programming, because unless the mind is introduced to an idea, later on when that idea appears, if it appears new, people will resist it. But if the idea is really old and they've heard it before or whatever, when it comes in, they'll think, no, that's fiction. That's fiction. And they'll turn their eyes the other way long enough until you can get your evil system in place.
Precisely. And that's why science fiction films, lots of stuff we saw in them years ago, has now become science fact and is accepted as everyday. But if you choose to have your eyes open rather than taking that as being face value of what happened, oh, what a coincidence, it's now become reality. No, if you investigate, you see they already had the technology before the science fiction films, but they'd held it back for military use or whatever in a different form, and they were waiting for the time that they were going to let profit from selling it to the general public. We've got mobile phones now, but they existed, the technology, way before they were ever available on the high street. This what appears new has happened way before, because the powers that be have stuff and they choose when it's released to us or if it's not released to us. Certain things are bought up. Many people have tried to get patents on running cars on water or other things, and they either end up accidentally or coincidentally dying quite rapidly, or their inventions are bought off them and then never see the light of day because, of course, the oil companies and stuff would stand to lose billions of pounds.
Well, if you legalized hemp, for example, a vast majority of the things that we make or have around us in our daily lives, anything that's machined or made out of oil products and derivatives, plastics, papers, and all of that kind of stuff, can all be made out of hemp, completely biodegradable, with no pesticides, herbicides, or any of that kind of stuff. It'd save the planet, right? Is it illegal still? Yeah. Why is that? Because saving the planet ain't profitable, okay?
Exactly. Monsanto and companies like them that have got involvements in weed killers, pesticides. They've also got involvements in food. I mean, that's mental when you look at it. Someone who does pesticides and stuff also does foods. Do you really want those processed foods? Would you really want to eat food from someone who's also involved in making pesticides? It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't go to a restaurant to buy weed killer for your garden. And yet this is part of everyday chuffing life.
Well, what's problematic is that the vast majority of our fruits and vegetables are covered in herbicides and pesticides. So regardless, it kind of actually makes sense that the people who give you all the herbicides and pesticides on your food also give you your food, Let's just cut out the middleman here. That's their thinking.
Yeah, and now they're copyrighting seeds and stuff, genetically modified foods, so that, if seeds were to blow in your garden and grow, apparently they own it. They could sue you. There's places in the world where they've now made it illegal to collect rainwater in baths or water containers outside because it belongs to the authorities. No, it belongs to bloody nature. It's come out of the chuffing sky. But people monetize and control, and it's all so that they can, as we said earlier, help depopulate the planet, both physically and psychologically. That's physical form, poisoning people, arguably, but then psychologically by fear being put through the media, brainwashing people through education and the workplace to be scared of being the odd one out so they don't achieve their full potential in life, and therefore they end up working at least 40 hours a week, 40 weeks of the year, generally more, for at least 40 years, increasingly longer of their life, to retire on 40% of the money they couldn't afford to live on in the first place. They're in a constant society of stress. Where's my next meal coming from? How can I afford this? Or trying to keep up with the Joneses because they want to make sure the kids look nice at school, so they haven't got enough money left to pay for something else. That it's all done by design. It's done by design to keep people scared, in that free state, in that suggestible, we're here to help you state. So when something that they want to get done, like taking away more of your freedoms and putting more surveillance in and stuff, they can come along and present it in a manner whereby it sounds as though it's going to be helpful to you. Oh, you know what? If we put this more surveillance in, there'll be less crime in that area, and therefore we won't need to spend as much on policing, so we won't have to charge you. In England, we have what we call council tax, but we won't have to charge you as much council tax, so you'll have more money in your pocket. People go, oh, yeah, benefit to me, and allow this to happen. But in truth, they're just setting up the 1984.
And what they don't tell you is that when you put all of those surveillance cameras in, the amount of crimes that they stop is so minimal that it's statistically insignificant, as in you can't actually tell the difference from one day to the other. Cameras everywhere, cameras not everywhere. What's the difference in the crime rate? Negligible. Nothing. All right, and that's the thing. These are not for criminals, ladies and gentlemen. Criminals help the government. You know why? Because the government is criminals. All right, and the whole concept of creating criminals within your society, whether it be by defathering the homes so that the young boys become 9 times more likely to enter the jail system, those are private prison systems. Okay, somebody's getting profit, somebody's getting money from that. You are paying taxes, and that is being given to private prison contractors and so on and so forth. Also, at the same time, that any crimes that are happening in your society, people are getting afraid, they're not trusting their neighbours, they're getting freaked out or something like that. And even if that was the case, the cameras don't prevent the crime whatsoever. It's only so that at that one point, there's this one activist who's a real trouble to the system. We can track him from point A, B, C, all the way to Z. We can track to find out where he lives, and then we can bust into his home and kill him. Okay? That's essentially what they're setting it up for. Not for any other reason whatsoever. It's to create a total surveillance state.
Yeah, and I mean, in recent weeks, as we do this live on the 30th, well, in England, it's the 30th of July. In the past few weeks, it's become clear there was an app on Facebook that was about making you look older or younger. And it turns out that if you'd not read the terms, they did this completely legally, okay? Because in the terms and conditions of the app, there was the option to untick a box, which means that you did not give any permissions to the person who put the app out there. But the vast majority of people don't read the terms and conditions. They walk around, assume everything's going to be okay. And by not unticking that box, they gave the permission for their photographs to be used forever in any manner, way, shape or form whatsoever by the people who put this app out. I can't remember, but I think off the top of my head, it was a Russian company. And they've got millions upon millions of people's faces, but also the data they've been allowed to take from the person's account, namely the name and all that, linked to the Facebook. So they've got all this data they could use to, in a similar way as Cambridge Analytica did, to influence people through what seem like innocent adverts or stories appearing on the newsfeed of their social media, but have actually been targeted to cause as a psychological warfare weapon.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a lot of the time we're actually in the throes of psychological warfare. What happens to the subject when psycho warfare techniques are being used upon them? Do their stress levels go up? Does their decision-making ability get fried and fractured? Does their ability to organize people, to resist, to think clearly and everything like that get reduced? And you're like, whoa, this is writ large happening across the entire population to prevent the ability to resist, not just prevent resistance, just the ability to effectively resist.
Yeah, precisely what you just said. And that's why it's so important that people start to question things, start to investigate for themselves, because then that will give them the motivation. They will get to that breaking point where they go, actually, you know what? It might be a bit scary to speak out or do something out of the ordinary different, but it's not as scary as letting this go on, because as you start to see where this is heading, if you do nothing, that will scare you more. So it will motivate you to do something, so that then there is a chance for our children and our great-grandchildren to actually have a world to live in decades and years to come, and to have a world to live in where they can have some level of freedom and life as you would like it to be, rather than literally living in like very small dwellings and houses, environments all in one area where you're told what to do, when to do it. No, that's basically being marketed as like a way of helping the planet, Agenda 2030, but in actual fact it's putting people in a glorified prison under any other name.
We've got a suggestion in here from the chat room that all cops should quit immediately. And this actually reminds me of something that's happening recently, is that now security guards are beginning to outnumber police. Okay, private security are beginning to outnumber police, because eventually they're going to get rid of police. All right, because police have to have oaths, they have to have rules, they have to have red tape and stuff like that, right? Private security, you don't. And because under Agenda 21, private contractors will be immune from prosecution, you're essentially going to have corporately owned police forces who are above the law, who will be able to do anything they want to any of the slaves, i.e. you and me. Okay?
Unfortunately, yeah, and tying in with that is the fact that more and more laws have already been getting passed. Now, I can only speak of England firsthand, because obviously I'm in England, but I am aware from having looked on the internet, similar things either have happened around the world or are in the process of happening. For example, in England, it's put as being the Prevention of Terrorism Act, that people can effectively be detained if it's under the Prevention of Terrorism Act for days and days and days without any particularly large amount of evidence, or one could argue without any.
That sounds, in other words, very, very similar to how the Patriot Act was implemented. It was close to 99.9% of the people that were detained or arrested or surveilled under the Patriot Act were later found out to have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. And that's because these anti-terrorism laws, if they were correctly applied, government officials would be getting arrested and surveilled left, right and centre, because terrorism, like fascism, communism, capitalism, these isms are actually systems of government. What defines a terrorist government is that they terrorize the people in order to getting them to go along with their agenda. Okay? Sound familiar, folks?
And that is the crux of brainwashing and mind control. It's to cause fear in people without them realizing you're the one who's... One of the ways is to cause fear in people, but ideally without them realizing you've caused that fear, which is where we get, for example, false flag terrorist attacks. Now, I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists who says that all terrorist attacks involve crisis actors, although I have seen stuff such as the Boston bombing where evidence has come out that people were paid to act parts of being hurt and stuff. But in the majority of cases, I believe it's more a case of the powers that be, the governments, turn a blind eye to innocent civilians genuinely getting injured and killed, because on their, their secret services have noticed that some fundamentalist group that they probably funded on the quiet and
probably had under surveillance and probably recruited them and probably gave them bombs.
Yeah, probably. So they know something's going to happen. So they could have stopped it. Often you hear after these things, oh, yeah, he was on our agenda, but we didn't think this was going to happen. No. You know what? I suspect you did know, but you turned a blind eye and thought, for the greater good, as they would justify it to their psychopathic selves, collateral damage of killing a few innocents to put fear into mass society. So they'll go, please help us, please protect us, please put armed police on the street, which we didn't have that many of in England previously, but after certain terrorist events, loads of them.
Please take my rights, take my rights,
Yeah, exactly. David Icke calls it problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem so that the reaction of the general public is, please protect me, to the perceived authority figure. So the perceived authority figure can do what they were always going to do in the first place. It's just if they'd done it without that thing happening, people would have gone, hey up, why are you suddenly arming more officers? Why is there more cameras going up? Why am I getting searched more at airports for far longer? And,
Well, it's ironic, actually, that the vast majority of quote-unquote anti-terrorism measures don't actually seem to reduce the terrorism at all. In fact, they only reduce the freedom. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to start becoming a little bit more cynical, okay? Just imagine, all right? Just big, wide-eyed imagination that policy is run by ruthless criminal sociopaths who lie convincingly, don't have a conscience, and don't feel remorse ever. Now, does all of the legislation that's really confusing getting passed, suddenly it's not confusing anymore, is it? If you consider who wrote it, who passed it, that kind of thing. If you're in that mindset, and you're like, wow, I feel a lot calmer now. I'm no longer confused. The world is run by ruthless criminal sociopathic scumbaggery with lies and infinite from this kind of. Oh, okay. What do I do about it now? And the answer is ultimately you've just got to live with integrity, okay? Be honest and behave with a moral conscience at all times, okay? That orders chaos, okay? These people are trying to create chaos so that they can create their own kind of order. If we create order, their chaos will dissipate and then they won't get their order that they want.
I could not agree more, Vinny, and that is exactly through this documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, which Brick in the Wall Films, a company run by award-winning producers and directors Richard Alexander Willett and Danny Cotton here in England, have been brave enough to put the neck on the line and make this kind of outspoken documentary that's just under 2 hours long. And through it, we're going to explore the areas of religion, politics, education, sport, science, you name it. Every area of life we're going to look at. I'm going to present evidence, facts of what's happened in history so that we can hopefully learn from history and not allow it to happen again. Stuff that's currently happening, and explain how it happens to wake people up, hopefully, to this. For example, one of the biggest dangers at the minute is 5G technology. And the reason that there are some places that are halting it, thank God, but the reason more places aren't halting it and are trying to bring in this untested, so far, any proof that's out there is proof that it's dangerous and can cause illness, cancers, mental illness, and all this kind of stuff, is because that's helpful with Agenda 2030 to depopulate the planet. And it will make a hell of a lot of money for the people at the top who are running the whole 5G thing. But we've got Dr. Robin Kelly, a medical GP who actually lives in New Zealand. He's from England, but he lives in New Zealand. Dr. Robin Kelly. He's a medical GP, but he's also a scientist, and he's investigated 5G, and he's got, if you go on YouTube, videos galore laying out the scientific evidence and medical evidence that it's dangerous, that it's going to killed people through giving them illnesses, bringing on cancers and all this kind of stuff. We've got him in the documentary, a credible individual, giving us evidence on that. And I found through speaking with him that, for example, for years, I helped a lot of military people when they left the armed forces who had post-traumatic stress disorder to overcome that using hypnotherapy. And in recent years, I've found there's been more and more people that, although I've been able to help them, I've not been able to cure them. And I'm doing that with my fingers because no such thing as a cure. It's about helping people overcome it and handle things. But I finally come to the conclusion that's because I've now discovered from what my investigations I've done that millimeter wave technology, which is what 5G is. 5G is not just 4G improved. No, it's an entirely different technology. It's millimeter wave technology, and it's been used in the war field.
It's actually an electronic warfare system. Okay, it was originally developed as a crowd control weapon called an LRAD, developed in Mexico for the coolness. That's what it means in Mexican. Now, the LRAD. Now, in either case, what this actually is a crowd control weapon. So you shoot the frequency at a crowd. Let's say it's a wide band. You've got, I don't know, like a big tunnel of this energy going at these people. Now, each and every person who steps into that band of waves coming at them, millimeter waves coming at them, they will interpret through each pore and each hair. All your hairs are antennas, by the way. Yep. Those antennas will interpret that millimeter waveform as burning, as fire. Okay, so you will feel like your entire skin, anything that's exposed to the actual frequency band, will feel like it's on fire. Now, imagine you're in a wheelchair and you can't get away, all right, or something like that. You're going to sit there on fire. And that's only one of the frequency bands that's embedded into this electronic warfare system. As we talked before about MK Ultra, part of MK Ultra's protocol was actually to find out what frequencies are which when it comes to human emotions and behaviors. So they would drill into the skulls of the patients, all over their head, shove electrodes in there and just turn up one frequency. The patient would go, "Oh my God, I'm so afraid! I'm so afraid!" Okay, that one's uncontrollable fear. What about this one here? "I gotta kill everybody!" Okay, that one's incredible rage. So they've mapped out the entire frequency pattern of all human emotion, and they've embedded it into the 5G frequencies. So if they want anybody to feel anything on the spectrum of human emotion, they can just flip a switch. Let's say you've got an election or something like that, and it's not going really well for your globalist candidate or something like that, and you need a riot to start so that they can impose martial law. We've got the technology embedded. Nice, we can make an entire population go to war immediately. Or let's say, I don't know, we've got to get rid of a few people or something like that, and we can actually target it instead of doing an entire area. Let's target an individual person and make them commit suicide because they're a real pain in the ass 5G activist. Oh, that person will kill themselves because the frequency made them do it. All right, so you're talking about complete and utter control and complete and utter surveillance. Let's not forget that, because people always go on about 5G and its health effects and what have you. Yeah, that's really bad. But its ability to surveil in real time all human activity everywhere, okay, that is a little bit more frightening, because it means that they will actually have physical control over everybody's life forever, because nobody will ever be able to be outside.
That's why smart meters have been brought in. Smart meters in houses, which you can refuse, certainly in England, and if you've got one, you can get it taken out at the moment. Best thing to do, because they're there also to communicate with the 5G technology on the lamppost and stuff. It's really... You need to look into these things. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Vinny's word. Look into it, and you'll see there's way more evidence there of the dangers of 5G. And it's not just the health dangers. As Vinny just said, Christ almighty, it makes it easier for the, surveillance, but also the pushing the buttons, the emotional buttons. And what's the scary thing is, this is not some new technology they've just discovered. Yeah, all right, millimeter wave, they've used it in warfare weapons. But going back to the 1940s, there was a book written by a stage hypnotist called Orman McGill called The Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnotism. And in that book, he told you how to make an audio oscillator, basically a little sonic audio device that you could set to a frequency that was not consciously able to be heard by anyone in the room. But if you put it behind the chairs on the stage where your volunteers that volunteered for the stage hypnosis show were going to sit, so they were close enough to it, because it would only work within a limited distance range, the frequency of it would flick their brainwave patterns into beta, which is hypnotized. So you could get them hypnotized quicker for your hypnosis show. And he mentioned in that book also the fact that there were other frequencies where if they were set to a certain frequency, it would immediately make somebody shit themselves or be sick or start crying. And that's going back to the early 1940s.
Mm-hmm. And so since then, they've perfected these designs and have rolled them out en masse and given the special keys to only a few special men who can be trusted, men who don't have a conscience, men who've risen through the ranks and have screwed people over again and again and again in order to get those ranks up, and their superiors have watched them, followed them, and recruited them, and made sure that they're in those positions of power because they can be trusted. Even though they're liars, they can be trusted to do the wrong thing.
And that is the key to do, what is right for them, sadly, is, when you stand back and look at it, wrong for us as a mass populace, for civilization as a whole.
This is the thing. I was just like watching movie critiques before about how to write a good villain, and it turns out that no villain actually thinks they're a villain. They're all thinking they're doing the right thing. All right, and whether or not they're insane or egomaniacal or something like that, they still think they're doing the right thing. Okay, so here's the mentality. The world is run by nobody at the moment, so let's run it ourselves. The world is full of useless eaters. Let's kill them all. The world and all its people that are left that aren't, too stupid enough to control them, what have you, they're dangerous. They might want freedom or something. So let's just stop them learning what that is. And then, once we've got an entire population on a global plantation, farmed, and the cows don't organise to revolt against the farmer, do they? The chickens don't fly the roost and never come back, do they? Okay, great. We're now livestock. That's basically the whole idea, is to use technology to turn a human being into a piece of livestock, more or less. And at the moment, I'm talking about literal livestock because we've all got birth certificates and stuff. Well, some of us don't anymore, but there's, on your birth certificate, there's a tracking number, little stock receipt, that kind of thing. That's because you're live stock. Okay, it's on the stock market somewhere under the Securities and Exchange Commission, who own all of our birth certificates, and they're being traded and bandied about on the stock market on a daily basis. Why do you think states have the quote-unquote sovereign power to tax? It's because they borrowed from international banks, and the international banks accepted your ass as collateral. That's why your government obeys the international banks and doesn't give a fuck about you.
And, banking-wise, that's hilarious. That's another area we're going to in extreme danger, extreme hypnosis, and fractional reserve banking. The fact that banks have been given the legal power, because it was passed through by the people that benefit, to lend out more money than they've got. Okay, so at one time, your banknote that said, "I promise to pay the bearer on demand," it meant that you could take it and, in theory, exchange it for that equivalent amount of gold, because it was reserved against gold. Then they were allowed to issue more currency than there were gold reserves. Then fractional reserve banking meant they could lend out more money, three times more at least, than they actually have. Thus meaning, and then they charge you interest on money they didn't have to lend you in anyway. So when it's paid back after you've been in debt and you pay it back, they can kind of make the fact they ever lent it you disappear, so they're making money from invisibleness. But all that aside, that is all about they want people in debt, basically. Because when people are in debt, they're not then able to lay down any kind of true freedom for themselves because they've got to pay this off. The interest is mounting. It actually upsets me when people buy a new house or they think they bought a house. A friend of mine said to me a while ago, "Oh, we've just bought a house, great. I've always wanted to own my own home." And I said, "Oh, cool. Did you win the lottery or something?" And he went, "No, why?" I said, "Well, I don't want to sound depressive, mate, but until you pay off that real last penny and all the bloody interest, which means you'll pay 3 times what they cost, at least, 2 to 3 times what the cost of the house was if you could have paid for it in full at once, you don't actually own it, and it could be taken off you at any minute if you forfeit payment, even by 1 pence along the way. You're under control. You would be much wiser to save up money and invest money, and it's not that difficult to find out how to invest money. If you start to open your eyes and investigate, you can start to use the same tricks that the elites do to start to get the similar kind of rewards, so that then you can save up the funds to then go and buy what you want outright, so you don't have to pay 3 times the amount for it. That's one thing, it's every single bloody area. It's madness. How can you lend out 3 times the amount of money that you've actually got? If that doesn't tell you that money is just an illusion, a falsehood, then nothing will. Look into it. That's why one of the Kennedys got assassinated, because he wanted to bring in his own currency system. And if he'd done that, all debt would have been wiped out. Everyone would have been better off. But the people at the top, the banking cartels, they'd have been out of business. So they've got to make the problem disappear.
I believe that president you're talking about was JFK, and I think he was actually more assassinated because he was quoted as saying, "I'm going to tear the CIA into 1,000 pieces and cast the shards to the wind." All right? Now,
that will have added to
if I may,
yes.
if I may, you know who controls the financial system in the United States? It's not actually the banks, it's the private intelligence companies. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the CIA actually has shareholders, okay? Approximately 60% privately owned. Okay, same with the NSA. They're the ones who actually jobs is to manage the economy of the slaves. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you've got a organised crime running the country, but you want to give it legitimacy so that people think that they're not slaves. Okay, so what you do is you call yourself a government, first of all. All right, we're a government. Oh, you're a legitimacy. You're definitely not organised crime. And let's say you've got something that you want to do in secret in the thing while you're being your criminal scumbaggery self, but you want to be able to keep all that stuff secret. Okay, so what you do is you create an intelligence agency, and you call us the Central Intelligence Agency, and everything we do is classified. Classified under what? Under national security. The nation will be insecure if we tell you what we're doing to destroy the nation. Okay, so that's how it works. And there's approximately half. I forget the amount, but it's a huge quantity of money. And April Chirpaw in the comments has just figured it out. It's to launder the drug money. Okay, so why do you launder drug money to keep an economy afloat? It's because when you've got, say, a credit card bill, all right, and do you look first at the monthly payment required, or do you look first at the total owing on the card? You have to look at their monthly payment required, right? So that means when you're putting in those little bits, there's this huge shortfall between how much debt is owed and how much money is actually in the system. And so what the CIA and other intelligence agencies around the world do is they sell huge quantities of high-value drugs like coke and heroin on the streets to minorities and things like that, and they siphon that money so that they can prop up the economy. Okay, you get rid of the drug money laundering, you get rid of the economy, more or less. And the way that they do this specifically, that's the generalized idea, but the way they actually get it done specifically is that they have front companies on Wall Street. Why? Because if you have a company that is registered on the New York Stock Exchange, you don't have to fill out deposit receipts. Okay, so that if you given more than $10,000 in cash, you don't have to file a receipt with the Securities and Exchange Commission to explain where your money came from. So you'll have Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and all of these big companies and things like that. They're actually just fronts for drug money laundering and that are owned by the CIA. Whoa.
Tremendous. Yeah, I mean, there's evidence out there that suggests that that is all completely the case. And we do scrape the surface on stuff like that as well in the documentary. We visit the Tavistock Institute in London, England, which it's on a back street. It looks completely innocent, and it's in the same offices as the British Psychological Society for psychologists and psychiatrists. What could be underhand about this place? Except then when you look into it, you see that the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations is what it's now called, but it used to be the Tavistock Hospital, which was formed as an offshoot in England of what started off as MK Ultra and derivatives of that, where they were doing electric shock therapy and trauma-based stuff. And I actually have a hypnotherapist colleague who goes under the name the Hypnosensei, Keith Anthony Taylor, who lives near London in England. And he was actually in the Tavistock, one of the Tavistock hospital medical units, and they did do that kind of electric shock stuff on him unnecessarily. And he firsthand told me about how they do these abhorrent mind control experiments and stuff. Fortunately, he's been able to, through people he knows and himself and his own strength, get deprogrammed, as it were, and is a survivor. But yeah, this stuff is going on out there, and it's all to protect dirty little secrets like that, the drug money, and the worldwide network of celebrity and political and similar high-level individuals involved in child sexual abuse.
And that's another thing is that the CIA is massively involved in as well, is child trafficking. Now, it's not just child trafficking for profit that they're involved in, it's child trafficking for control. Now, what that means is, and this was experiments in the 70s and things like that, where they would get a politician, give him a tab of acid, take him into a hotel room that had a false wall or something like that with a glass or whatever, and they'd film him having sex with a prostitute and then blackmail him. Boom, they own a politician for life.
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Not do what they tell him to do, that sort of thing. And so now, I think it'll be. I don't have evidence to suggest this, but I think that a large percentage of the most powerful politicians in our society have been either blackmailed or are pedophiles and then were blackmailed or something like that. I mean, even Pie and Mash Films released a list of 1,000 British MPs who were pedophiles, former MPs and things like that. So it seems to me that the higher you go, the more debauched and more disgusting you're actually likely to see. You know?
It's consistent with the psychopathic behaviour of no conscience whatsoever. And yeah, it is largely from my investigations, as we mentioned in the film. And also, if you go on my website, magicalguru.com, click on where it says Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. And on there's details of how to find my YouTube channel, which is Celebrity Hypnotist. And there's a playlist where in there I lay out I explain the worldwide network of child sexual abuse. I name celebrities, MPs, politicians, high-ranking people, and how it all bloody interlinks. And yes, it is largely about blackmail leverage, or as the Germans called it during MK Ultra and stuff, compromat material. So they will, and the media use this as well. It's used high up to leverage laws into place, make sure this law goes through, otherwise your dirty little secret's going to get out. But the media also will a really good, honest journalist, and there are some out there in the world, their intention would be, if they found out about this stuff, to get it out there and let the mass populace know. Unfortunately, media owners that are more about making money and controlling people, brainwashing them through lies, such as, for example, Rupert Murdoch, the Murdoch family. They've been proven to hack people's phones, including murdered schoolgirls, to tap people's phones, to fabricate stories, and a whole bunch of all legal stuff. That's not conspiracy theory, it's fact, because they've been done in the courts for it, and it's cost them a fortune. And you'll see on my website, I'm involved in various legal cases in relevance to the Murdoch media organisation, because I tried to expose their fake Sheikh Mazza Mahmood, the undercover journalist that had stitched people up and fabricate stories. Tried to expose him back in 1998. Slightly backfired, so they managed to screw the legal system and pull strings and stuff, so that I got a short prison sentence, which is currently in the Court of Appeal some, 21 years later, currently going through the Court of Appeal to get it overturned now that the guy in question, Mazza Mahmood's been jailed for, it's finally come out what I found out years ago. And I know firsthand that the media will find out stuff about people that they should report. It would be in the public interest, but they lock it in a safe and they go to that person and they go, we've got this on you. So give us a good story, give us the exclusive about when you're getting married or when your kid's born or whatever. And in return, we'll keep that locked in the safe. And they've always got it there to dangle over them. Or if it's about an MP, it can be, help us get this law through. Or a prime example in England, imagine if Rupert Murdoch and other media owners, especially in England, but elsewhere in the world as well, were to get interesting material about certain politicians who were currently in power, and then went to them and went, look, we've got this video of you with an underage girl or boy, or we've got this proof that you take these drugs, or whatever it may be. And it's all going to come out unless you make sure that this happens. Well, for those who are not in England, if you type in Leveson inquiry into the media, into Google, you'll see that there was part one of a thing called the Leveson inquiry in England into the illegal conduct and dishonest conduct of the media. And there was supposed to be a part two after certain court cases had taken place. But this would have looked at the police corruption, politicians' corruption, and links to the media and how they work together. And strangely enough, guess what? They changed their mind and they've scrapped it. The people that suddenly got into power, thanks to the Murdoch papers influencing the public, then suddenly scrapped this thing that could have been highly detrimental to those people.
Which, incidentally, they were already on the take anyway in the first frickin' place, and were probably being blackmailed into put on some kind of stage show. And somebody said in the chat room here that basically they threw out Jimmy Savile as some sort of like piece of meat to placate the public. And I'm thinking that's the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein and any of these other high profile, elite pedophile sort of cases or something like that. These are the bottom rung people. I mean, surely they're well connected, well influenced and stuff like that, but that's not the point of putting them on trial. It's not for anything that they did. It's to put them on trial for the public so that the public can think that something's being done so that they don't have to do anything. And then they sit back and they go, something's been done. Sweet as. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, there is that element. Actually, with Jimmy Savile in England, I think, to be honest, that had it not been for example, the British TV presenter Jill Dando, there's a lot of evidence out there and people who knew her well that are saying that she came to realise what Jimmy Savile was up to and other people connected to him and was going to make this public. And that is why she was assassinated. But if some of her friends let that be known, I think that Jimmy Savile, if they could have avoided him being held up, they would have done, because he was incredibly well connected. As I explained on my YouTube channel in the folder that I mentioned before, Jimmy Savile was, and as I'd link and prove with evidence and dates and stuff in the Tinfoil Hats podcast that are on my YouTube channel, he was connected to the Moors murderers, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. And in turn, all of them were connected to the Cray twins, the criminals, famous criminals from London. And in turn, they're linked to royalty. Jimmy Savile was good friends with Prince Charles. And, relative of Prince Charles is Prince Andrew, who, mates of Epstein. Another mate of Prince Charles was Peter Ball, the Church of England, I think it was Church of England, priest, who got done for paedophilia, but after he was done for it, Prince Charles gave him a place to live on his grounds.
This reminds me of something strange, and you'll see the connection here. When cannabis got legalized in the Netherlands, the amount of people smoking weed in the Netherlands went down dramatically. It actually got cut into 1/3. And people were asked, hey, why did you stop smoking weed? And they say, well, my social circles changed. When I was committing a crime, I had to be around other criminals so that they wouldn't, bust me or anything like that. And after it wasn't a crime anymore, my social circles changed. And I was thinking about this in terms of pedophilia and stuff like that. Why are all these people all friends and stuff like that? Because they're all pedophile criminals and they have to hang out together because they don't have any other friends and what they're doing is illegal. Your drug dealer's not your friend, folks.
Yeah, and they know they've got blackmail material, the media have, or other powerful people have that could be used against them, so they can't break away. And some of them will have been forced into that circle against their will. It happens, in the music industry, in the film industry, people, get there's stories galore out there of people who their managers get them addicted to drugs. And then while they're under the influence of drugs, they're probably taken to a party where they genuinely believe that person believes everyone to be of age, but the manager has made sure that the reality is somewhat slightly different and gets the video footage that later on, when the person isn't under the influence of drugs, they can look at. And when they've stopped being violently sick because they realise what they've done, that they would never have done had they not been misled, coerced, manipulated and drugged, they suddenly realise they never want that coming out and they can be coerced into doing all manner of other things.
That's why they call it entrapment, because you're being entrapped.
Exactly. And it sounds scary and it sounds like, really? But yeah, really, What easier way to manipulate people than them being scared of something being released or known about them that they don't want to be known?
Yeah, because the whole concept of that is, number one, okay, well, you're going to go to jail, and number two, when you're in jail, you're probably going to get murdered because of the things that you've done, and we'll spread rumors out there or whatever. So that's really, really powerful way to keep somebody under control. And if that don't work, hey, do you have any daughters? Do you have any family? Okay, guess what's going to happen to them if you don't do what we tell you? We won't come after you. No. We'll come after your family. All right? That will keep you in line, son.
Everybody has a button, and it's all about pain and pleasure, and that's what's used in brainwashing. Hypnotherapy, it's used to, if somebody's currently a smoker and you want to stop them smoking, you've got to attach massive pain to any thoughts, feelings, emotions or cravings that could lead them to carry on smoking, and massive pleasure to not doing it. Whereas currently, when they come to the hypnotherapist as a smoker, they're deriving some kind of pleasure from smoking, and when they've tried to stop in the past, it's been too painful for them, all the cravings. So we rewire that, and that's with a positive outcome for them. But the powers that be can use similar techniques to rewire emotions, pain and pleasure, for more negative and vindictive outcomes for their own gain. And that is what goes on around us in many areas of life. It's emotional manipulation, control. And like you say, if it's not the individual themselves, there'll be somebody or something they can use to flick that switch to make people do stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I've been telling my audience as well. If I ever get compromised, like if I start telling you terrorism's real, it's not manufactured by the government. If I start telling you that immigrants are the problem and it's not a manufactured threat to kind of destabilize society and bring us into a new world order. If I ever start telling you that vaccines, some vaccines are safe for you when I know they're all bad or anything like that, I've been compromised. Doesn't matter what I did, doesn't matter what it was, doesn't matter how much you like me, how many years you've been following my show, how loyal you think, you are to me or whatever. Abandon this show and expose me, please. Okay? Because my greatest fear, ladies and gentlemen, is I will use all my talents and skills to fuck humanity sideways instead of help it out of this hole that we're in. Okay? So if I ever become a piece of shit like that, you have my permission to stop listening to this show, and please expose me as hard as you can, and don't stop until I've been dethroned, deplatformed, taken the fuck out, because you can't do that with anybody who's a liar or a charlatan or anybody who's compromised. It just, no, he'll eventually get it. It's just like, no, I've been goddamn compromised. Do something about me, and don't stop until I'm gone. And it's the same thing with a lot of other talk radio show hosts and things like that I've only found out recently have been compromised and stuff like that. And I don't do anything to them or anything like that because, hey, these people get really angry. They come back at you, It's like, oh, why is the media so powerful and all of that kind of thing? It's because they've got defense mechanisms, okay? They're capable of defending themselves against any would-be attacker. So don't go blindly into that fight, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it first. For example, I've been demonetized, all right? Easy way to control the media. Oh, you're making money off of telling the truth? We'll just stop that from fucking happening, won't we? So now, ladies and gentlemen, I rely 100% on you to fund the show. So if you do want to go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and donate through PayPal, or go to patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. You can actually donate, right? Whether it's weekly, monthly, or just a one-off, and that's simply to support the show and the broadcast, because for the last 10 years I haven't been compromised, which the vast majority of people can't really say. And in fact, there aren't any New Zealanders who are doing what I'm doing, and that's why I bring so many of them on the show, because they need the platform. They're activists. They do what I consider the real work, and this goes for you as well, bro. You're doing the real work, doing the research, reading the documents, reading the works, translating them for people, stuff like that. That's the real work. My job is secondary, okay? My job's to make sure that those people who do the real work get heard. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, because Vinny, without people like your good self, it's all well and good, bricking the wall, wonderfully having the bravery to make this documentary and me to do it, and people like Neil Saunders, the author of Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, 2 excellent books on mind control. We've also got Dr. Robin Kelly, I mentioned, the 5G expert, and Gareth Icke, David Icke's son, is also in the documentary, talking about how people get corrupted in the music industry and stuff. And it's all well and good us doing that, but without people like your good self to let people out there know about it, the message wouldn't get through to them. The opportunity wouldn't be there for them to watch the film and hopefully wake up and see the bigger picture. And, when it does come out, which is the first week of September it's scheduled for, the trailer for the film can be seen right now. Just go to magicalguru.com. Click on where it says Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, and the trailer's there and some web previews, some tasters of what it's going to be like. And you'll see that I've not just done research, but this is what hopefully I bring to the table that some people out there, fortunately haven't done, because it was a negative thing at one time. But I have been pulled through the barrel. I actually had to serve some time in prison because my attempt to expose the illegal activities of Rupert Murdoch's fake Sheikh Mazza Mahmood backfired slightly, as you can see on my website by clicking on the tab that says Fake Sheikh Exposed. Fortunately now, almost 2 decades on, the truth has come out. That guy in question has served time in prison for his illegal activity, although I'm still fighting to get the truth out there more, because I've got evidence there that myself and many other people, including royalty and other celebrities, were drugged without our knowledge by this guy, and that Rupert Murdoch's organisation were arguably aware of these things in the same way as they were aware of illegal phone hacking. And much to my eternal shame, indirectly, and I say indirectly because I wasn't paid by the News of the World or Murdoch's newspapers directly, but a freelance journalist that worked for them paid me to work for him. So I was like a step removed. And I did, as I explain on the recordings that are on my YouTube channel, I did, for example, know many years ago, back in sort of around 1996, that the Australian born, but particularly famous in England, children's telepresenter and musician Royle was a paedophile. I knew back then because his house got robbed, apparently, and this journalist was approached with sensitive documents to see if he wanted to buy them, which he did, but he didn't want the heat on him. So rather than them going, well, I say he didn't want the heat on him, he was of the impression they might go directly into the safe, like we talked about earlier, and be used as compromat material. So he actually did want the story to break, but he couldn't be seen to have broke it elsewhere because of his loyalties that laid with a certain organisation. So he had me go and try and pitch this elsewhere, and nobody was interested. Or they blatantly said they were interested, but for various reasons they won't go into, they wouldn't break the story. In other words, I know firsthand that they will suppress stories for a bigger agenda. And I'll explain a lot more of that gets explained in the documentary. So this is not just me having gone out there, read other people's books or watched their DVDs and gone, oh yeah, I'll go and independently research it. I've got first-hand experience behind the scenes of how these bloody, dodgy, illegal media organisations use stuff as blackmail material, how they do use illegal techniques to get stories on people, and how they will print things without any regard for the truth, just so they can influence the mass populace into believing certain things for their own benefit and gain.
Now, we have a question in the chat room from Ulrich McGee. He's asking you about Brian Harvey. Who's that?
Brian Harvey is not a close friend of mine, but I would class him as a friend, with a similar aim to expose Rupert Murdoch and his illegal activities, who was a very famous, for people who are not in England, if you type Brian Harvey East 17, EAST, East 17 into YouTube, you'll see that he had numerous top 10 hits with East 17, this boy band. And then he was thrown under the bus. The way that the media will relate it is that when he was asked a question of, have you ever taken drugs? He said, yeah, I took ecstasy and it was wonderful. And the way they put that interview out, they edited it to make him look worse than, to make it look as though he was glorifying drugs. It was twisted out of context because, as I understand it from what Brian said on his own YouTube channel, his manager at the time realised that Brian was starting to ask questions. And those questions were about potential sexual abuse and other dodgy things going on in the music industry. And that Brian needed, therefore, to be silenced by the powers that be. And so they stitched Brian up good and proper. And on his, to the point where one day, Brian was in court facing charges for something, and he was found completely innocent and exonerated. Get that? Completely innocent, exonerated, walked out of court, not guilty. And the Murdoch newspaper printed a story saying he'd been found guilty. Yeah. And if you search out Brian Harvey's YouTube channel and search Brian Harvey conspiracies and stuff, you'll find that he's got evidence there that, it's been proven that Rupert Murdoch's News of the World and Sun newspapers illegally hacked people's voicemails on their mobile phones. But Brian Harvey, who is being labelled by these newspapers as some kind of nutter, paranoid nutter, of course they're going to try and label him that way because he's got evidence that they didn't just hack people's voicemail messages, they actually illegally tapped their landline telephones as well and listened in live to their live phone calls. It wasn't just voicemail hacking. He's got evidence that shows that they were listening in live to get stories on people and to get blackmail stuff.
This is Operation Mockingbird, okay? So
yes.
Basically back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, the CIA figured out that, hey, if we want to control what people think, we need to control the media. So they did. They embedded their people. They recruited people. Walter Cronkite, okay, America's most trusted voice, was recruited by the CIA and was working for them and even received a World Government Award. Okay, that's what these people are feeding from, this trough of globalism and scumbaggery and what have you. And I think, not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but God damn, I've been given some good interviews lately. I've been doing some really good shows, been really helping people out, and it's also been really fun as well. Because look, it's very rare that you can actually do all of this with a smile on your face, because you're talking about basically the worst elements of humanity, and it's difficult to enjoy that. This show, on the other hand, the worst elements of humanity, this is quite fun to talk about, and that's basically how I try to differentiate this show from the others, because it is the poison with the cure. All right, when you eat an apple, the sugar within it, the fructose, is poisonous to you and your liver can't process it properly. But because the apple has fiber that is bonded with those molecules, it enables the liver to process them properly, okay? You've got to package the poison with the cure, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is scary, okay? Yes, this is dangerous. But no, we don't have to be so stressed out about it that we can't do anything about it.
Laugh in the face of fear, because you talked about antidotes. Fear releases cortisol and all the stress hormones. Laughter releases the antidote to them. Endorphins and dopamine and all the feel-good chemicals. And the doctor, Patch Adams, there's a film about him. He realised and found out that by getting kids to laugh that had terminal illnesses, they improved and they lived longer, happier, healthier lives as a result. The powers that be tried to inflict fear and stress into your life. Well, the antidote to that is laughter. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. It's a bit early in the morning and I badly need to pee, so we are going to have to wrap it up just there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us, and bear in mind, again, I remind you one last time, ladies and gentlemen, that I've been demonetized, okay? So if you want me to be able to eat, pay my rent, pay my bills, or anything like that, you do have to go to my website, thevinnyeastwoodshow.com, or patreon.com/ Vinny Eastwood to manually donate. You can't just, do a super chat on the chat room and stuff anymore, which is really sad. The last time I was monetized, I got $900 for the month, and close to 99% of that was super chat donations from generous listeners. And so to go from $900 a month on this to zero has been pretty tough, ladies and gentlemen. So if you can help me in any way, shape or form, I really do appreciate that. My very special guest, Jonathan Royle, magicalguru.com is his website.
May I just say before we go, look into my eyes or around the eyes, into the eyes, imagine you're under, no, seriously, joking aside, you may notice with every breath that you take, every noise that you hear, every word that I say, and every thought that you think, that you can start to begin to notice how good it will feel when you go to Vinny's website and donate whatever you can afford right now to help this message of truth continue. And then when you've done that, and your donation's gone in, go and take a look at magicalguru.com and click on the bit Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, and thanks. Please do share this everywhere.
Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis is the documentary. It's not out yet. I think it's coming out very soon.
First week of September. But you can join the newsletter list via my website, the information I've just given you.
Awesome. And also I want to encourage people, watch documentaries just in general. It makes you more intelligent. Okay, I like Hollywood films and the big CGI fest as much as the next guy, but I always feel better and brighter after watching a documentary of some kind. That's how I had my geometric level of awakening, by watching a documentary a day for like 6 months. After that was over, I then became a talk radio show host because I had a background downloaded knowledge that was enabled me to be on this stage and talk as though I know what I'm talking about when I don't. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, nobody knows what they're doing in this life either, okay? But we just keep doing it anyway. All right, thank you very much. And those are the words of Ricky Gervais. I'm not that clever to make that shit up with myself. All right, good night, everybody.